Officer Rick Dalton slammed the door of his patrol car so hard it rattled the frame. Rain lashed the cracked windshield as he stalked toward the gas station entrance. Fists clenched and jaw tight. Loiterers again, he muttered under his breath, one hand on his belt, the other adjusting the badge on his chest. Every damn week, same crowd, same garbage. Inside, standing by the coffee machine, was a tall black man in a tailored navy blue coat. He wasn't hunched over or browsing like a customer. He stood straight, still, as though waiting for something or someone. His hands were tucked calmly into his coat pockets, his posture dignified, confident. Rick's eyes narrowed. "You, what are you doing here?" he barked, stepping into the fluorescent-lit store. "You don't look like you're buying anything. You loitering or casing the joint?" The man turned, slowly, and fixed Rick with a calm, unblinking stare. His voice, when he spoke, was quiet, even polite. "Just waiting. I have a meeting in 5 minutes. I was early." Rick stepped closer, sneering. "Meeting? Here? You expect me to believe that?" The clerk behind the counter, a nervous teenager with a name tag that read Sean, looked up but said nothing. Rick jabbed a finger toward the door. "This isn't a damn waiting room. Move it. I'm not causing a problem." The man replied evenly. "And I have every right to be here. You're escalating something that doesn't exist." Rick scoffed. "Listen, I've had it with your kind thinking you can stroll around wherever you want like you own the place. You don't. This is my town, my precinct, my rules." And before the man could say another word, Rick spit straight into his face. The room went deathly quiet. The spit landed just below the man's left eye. His face didn't move, not a flinch. He calmly reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a folded white handkerchief, wiping his face with slow precision. The clerk dropped his pen. A couple who had been browsing by the chips aisle froze mid-step. Rick stood there, nostrils flaring, ready for a fight. "What? Cat got your tongue now?" The man finished cleaning his face. Then, still calm, he looked Rick in the eye and said, "You just assaulted your new commanding officer." Rick blinked. "What the hell did you just say?" "My name is Julian Cross," the man replied. "I'm the newly appointed chief of police for this city. I was supposed to meet the mayor here. He's late." He pulled out a black leather folder, opened it, and held up the golden shield inside Chief's insignia gleaming. Rick's face drained of color. "You're lying." "Call the mayor," Julian said, still calm. "Or better yet, call Captain Reyes. He'll confirm it." Rick took a stumbling step backward, eyes wide. You're the new chief." "That's right." Julian folded the folder shut and placed it back into his coat pocket. "You're finished," Julian said, voice now edged with steel. "Not just because of what you did to me, but because this isn't the first time you've crossed the line." Rick looked around the gas station. The clerk was still frozen. The couple by the chips had their phones out now, filming. "I didn't know who you were," Rick stammered. "That's the point," Julian snapped. "You thought I was just another black man who didn't belong. So you spat. You humiliated yourself. Not because I'm the chief, but because you don't respect anyone who looks like me." The tension in the room was suffocating. Julian walked past Rick, slow and deliberate, and exited the gas station just as the mayor's car pulled up, lights flashing through the rain. He didn't look back. Rick stood alone, chest heaving, as the reality of what he'd done crashed down on him like thunder. That was just the beginning. Rick watched through the glass as Julian Cross, tall and composed despite the humiliation he'd just endured, extended a hand to Mayor Harding. The mayor, a short, balding man with an umbrella tucked under one arm, greeted him with the kind of familiarity that instantly confirmed what Julian had said. The two spoke for a moment, and then Mayor Harding glanced toward the gas station toward Rick. Their eyes met. Rick stepped back. "Shaw!" he muttered, suddenly aware of how exposed he was. The clerk had disappeared into the back. The couple was still filming. He yanked his radio from his shoulder. "Dispatch. This is Officer Dalton. The first, need to speak with Captain Reyes." Now, there was static. Then, hold please. He paced in tight circles, wiping the sweat from his upper lip with a trembling hand. It wasn't just the spit, it was what came before the words. The look, the venom. He had crossed a line he couldn't uncross. And now it was on video. Dalton, came Captain Reyes's voice over the radio. Rick swallowed. Captain, is it true? About a new chief? A Julian Cross. There was a pause. Yes, effective today. Chief Cross is now in charge. Rick closed his eyes. I didn't know. I didn't recognize him. He was just standing there. I heard, Reyes said coldly. The mayor just called me. Stay where you are. Internal Affairs will meet you at your location within the hour. What? IA. Rick's voice cracked. Cap, come on, this is me. Rick, you assaulted a superior officer. You humiliated the department. Stay put. Click. Rick's knees nearly gave out. Outside. Julian and Mayor Harding had entered a black SUV. The storm was letting up now, but a quiet tension still hung in the air. Julian's hands were folded tightly in his lap. I'm sorry you had to walk into that on your first day, the mayor said, glancing over. Juan, I had no idea it would go like that. Julian exhaled slowly. No, Mr. Mayor, you didn't. But I did. The mayor blinked. What do you mean? I knew this town's reputation before I accepted the position. I knew there would be resistance. Racism doesn't wear a hood anymore. It wears a badge, a uniform, a smile. It's embedded. That officer Dalton, he just confirmed everything I feared. Mayor Harding nodded solemnly. What do you want to do? Julian's jaw tightened. I want him suspended immediately. Pending investigation. I want a full review of his service record, complaints, citations, everything. You got it. But more than that. Julian looked out the window as the city rolled by. I want to fix this department. I want to burn out the rot. And I know it won't be easy. But I'm ready for war, if that's what it takes. Back at the station, Rick sat in a stiff metal chair in the empty briefing room, sweat bleeding through his undershirt. His hands twitched. He had built a career on control, on dominance. He had never expected that dominance to be challenged, much less shattered. The door opened. 2 IA officers entered, one with a tablet, the other with a neutral expression. Officer Dalton, the lead investigator, said, You're being placed on administrative leave, effective immediately. Turn in your badge, weapon, and keys. You're kidding me, Rick barked. I gave 20 years to this department. You also just spat on the new chief of police, the investigator said. On camera, Rick slammed a fist into the table. He provoked me. Standing there like he owned the place. The other officer raised an eyebrow. He does now. He's your superior. You assaulted him unprovoked. It's not just about you anymore. The public saw it. Rick glared at the wall as he unhooked his badge. You want to take me down, he hissed. Fine. But don't pretend like I'm the only one. 3 days later, the footage had gone viral. Across social media, the video was everywhere. White cop spits on black man, then realizes he's the police chief. The caption alone drew millions of views. Every major network picked it up. Commentators debated it on morning shows. Protests began forming outside the station. Julian Cross sat behind the desk in his new office, the nameplate freshly engraved. He hadn't said a word publicly since the incident, but today he was ready. His assistant knocked. Chief, press conference starts in 5. Julian stood and adjusted his uniform. It was crisp, dark navy. With the gold insignia shining on his collar, he looked himself in the mirror, eyes steady. Then he stepped out and walked toward the podium outside, where dozens of reporters, cameras, and officers waited. Good afternoon, Julian began, gripping the sides of the podium. Many of you know who I am now because of a video. A video of a man being disrespected, humiliated, spat on because of the color of his skin. The crowd was silent, hanging on every word. That man was me. And that officer, he wasn't a bad apple. He was a reflection of a culture that I have been hired to dismantle. Cameras flashed. Reporters scribbled. I didn't take this job to smile and shake hands. I took it to bring accountability. And to those officers, watching if you wear this badge with hate in your heart, if you think your uniform makes you better than the people you swore to serve. I have news for you. Your days are numbered. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. But to those who serve with integrity, who put community first, I will stand beside you. Together, we will build something better, something honest, something just. He stepped back from the podium, and the applause began. Meanwhile, Rick sat in his small, silent apartment, watching the press conference with bloodshot eyes. The internet had dug into his past, uncovered years of excessive force complaints, racial profiling, even off-duty bar fights. What had once been quiet whispers were now national headlines. He stared at the screen as Julian Cross stood tall and powerful, commanding respect with every syllable. Rick smashed the remote. You think you're better than me, he growled. You think you can come in here and rewrite the rules, but the world had already moved on. Rick wasn't the face of the law anymore. He was the face of disgrace. And Julian was just getting started. Over the next few weeks, Chief Julian Cross became the most talked about figure in the city. His first act as chief wasn't to redecorate his office or shake hands with department veterans. It was to launch an internal audit of the entire police force. Files were pulled, complaints reviewed, body cam footage analyzed. He brought in outside consultants, civil rights experts, and community leaders. Every officer's record was scrutinized, including Rick Dalton's. Julian stood in front of a long digital screen in the conference room, flanked by a panel of his hand-picked reform task force. On it was Rick's file, 22 citizen complaints in 17 years, 8 for excessive force, 5 for racially biased stops. None had led to formal punishment. Julian's voice was cold. This, he said, pointing at the screen, is what's been allowed to fester. Captain Reyes sat stiffly at the end of the table. With respect, Chief, some of these complaints were dismissed. Julian turned to him. Dismissed by whom? Other officers. Internal reviews that were led by his friends. The people of this city don't trust us, Captain. And now we know why. Reyes looked down. One of the task force members, a woman named Nia Bell, head of the city's Civil Rights Council, leaned forward. What's your recommendation? Chief. Julian didn't hesitate. Termination. And an official apology to the citizens who filed these complaints and never saw justice. We will not protect predators in uniform. Not under my watch. Rick received the letter 2 days later. It came by courier. No meeting, no goodbye, just a cold, legal envelope that ended his 20-year career with a single sentence, effective immediately. You are hereby terminated from the Metropolitan Police Department for conduct unbecoming of an officer. He stood in his kitchen, paper shaking in his hands, rage bubbling in his throat. This is bull's tea, he screamed, slamming the letter down. He's got a damn agenda. His wife, Angela, stood at the doorway, arms crossed, eyes filled with tired disgust. No, Rick. He's doing what should have been done a long time ago. Rick spun around. You're taking his side. I'm taking the side of decency, she said flatly. Do you know how many times I watched you come home and brag about putting someone in their place? You think I didn't see what was happening? You weren't serving and protecting anyone. You were dominating. And it's finally caught up to you. He stormed past her. They ruined my life. No, Rick, she whispered. You did that all on your own. Julian didn't stop with Rick. Every division was swept clean. Officers who had quietly enabled brutality were put under review. Promotions were frozen. Training programs were rewritten. Julian personally attended the community meetings in the most underserved neighborhoods. He didn't send deputies, he went himself. At one of these meetings in a crowded rec center, an older black woman stood up, her voice quivering with decades of grief. My grandson, she said, holding up a photo. He was stopped by that officer, Dalton, pushed to the ground, called a thug. He was 14. He never went back to school after that. Do you know what that does to a boy? Julian stepped off the stage and took the photo gently in his hands. "Yes, ma'am," he said, voice trembling. "I do, and I'm sorry no one listened before, but I'm listening now, and I promise you his story won't be forgotten." The room erupted in applause. Some people cried, others nodded. For the first time, they felt like someone in power saw them. Back at the station, resentment simmered beneath the surface. Not all officers were happy. Whispers of the new guy's witch hunt echoed in locker rooms. Some called him chief diversity hire behind his back. Others complained about walking on eggshells. Julian knew this would happen. So one morning, he walked into the main precinct briefing room, no fanfare, no entourage, and stood in front of every on-duty officer. "You think I'm here to ruin your careers," he said. "Wrong. I'm here to save them." Murmurs. "You think this badge gives you power?" He held up his own. "It doesn't. It gives you responsibility. And if you abuse that, if you dishonor this, then I will remove you. Not because I hate you, but because the public deserves better." A hand rose. Officer Grayson, a veteran, pale and stiff. "Chief, what if some of us feel like we're being hunted? That no matter what we do, it's never enough?" Julian nodded slowly. "Then I suggest you ask yourself why. If your conscience is clean, you should have nothing to fear. But if guilt keeps you up at night, then maybe it's time to look in the mirror." Silence. He let the words hang in the air before turning and walking out. Meanwhile, Rick wasn't done. Unable to accept his fall, he filed a wrongful termination lawsuit against the department. He made appearances on fringe talk shows, peddling stories of being canceled by woke politics and painting Julian as a radical. But it didn't stick. Because every time Rick opened his mouth, another story surfaced, another body cam clip, another complaint. Public sentiment turned. Even his lawyer quit the case after a week, citing irreconcilable moral conflicts. Rick spiraled, alone, broke, bitter. One night, he showed up drunk at the police station, pounding on the glass, screaming for Julian. "I want to talk to him," he bellowed. "He ruined me." Julian, still in his office, was alerted by security. He came down, stepped outside, faced Rick through the rain. Rick's eyes were bloodshot. "You think you're better than me?" Julian looked at him, really looked, and saw a man hollowed out by hate. "I don't think I'm better than anyone," Julian said quietly. "But I am better than the man who spat in my face because of my skin." Rick trembled. "You don't belong here." Julian stepped forward. "I belong exactly where I am. And you never did." Then he turned and walked back into the building. Rick never came back. 6 months later, the department looked different. The community patrol unit was now the most diverse in history. Use of force incidents dropped by 40%. Public trust ratings surged. And Julian, he kept showing up at schools, town halls, barbershops. Not because it was PR, but because it mattered. At the annual city awards, Mayor Harding presented Julian with a plaque for restoring honor, justice, and humanity to this department. Julian took it humbly. Then, looking out at the crowd, he said, "I didn't come here to be a hero. I came to serve. And I'll keep doing that every damn day until every child in this city knows they're safe, seen, and respected." The room rose to its feet. Not because he was black, not because he was chief, but because he was right. The 7th month of Julian Cross's tenure brought a different kind of challenge. It wasn't protests. It wasn't angry officers. It wasn't even Rick Dalton, whose name had faded from headlines and whispers alike. No, this challenge came from within Julian himself. The weight of leadership, the constant pressure to prove not just competence but perfection, had begun to erode something deep inside. Late at night, long after the station emptied, Julian sat in his office alone. The desk was neat, the air silent, the shadows long. In his hands was a letter from a 10-year-old girl named Maya Jenkins. It was handwritten in pink marker, with a drawing of a badge and a stick figure labeled Chief Julian. "Dear Chief Julian, thank you for being brave. My big brother got scared of cops because of what happened to his friend. But then he saw you on the news and said, maybe not all of them are bad. You make me feel safe. I hope you never stop being chief. Love, Maya. Julian's throat tightened. He folded the letter carefully and placed it in the top drawer of his desk. Then he leaned back, eyes closed, hands pressed together, willing the tears not to fall, because even though he wore the uniform, carried the title, and stood at the helm of a broken system, finally bending toward justice, he was still just a man who bled, who cracked, who carried every burden the badge had ever placed on someone who looked like him. There was a knock at the door. It was Nia Bell. She didn't say anything, just walked in, sat across from him, and placed a takeout container on his desk. "You haven't eaten," she said gently. He smiled weakly. "You keeping tabs on me now?" She shrugged. "Someone's gotta." Julian looked at her, really looked. Nia had been there from the beginning, a voice of reason when he was overwhelmed, a truth-teller when others cowered. He admired her, trusted her. "You ever wonder if it's all too much?" he asked quietly. Nia nodded. "All the time. But then I think of Maya." Julian's head lifted. "Yeah," Nia said. "I read her letter too. She's not the only one watching. You gave people hope, Julian. You made them believe that change isn't just possible, it's happening. You don't get to walk away now." He exhaled deeply. "I'm not planning to. Just needed to remember why I started." "You started," Nia said, "because some racist spit in your face, and instead of shrinking, you stood up." Julian chuckled softly. "Hell of a way to get introduced," Nia grinned. "And yet here you are, a week later." Julian received a call. A body had been found in a cheap motel just outside the city. Suicide. No note. No ID needed. Rick Dalton. Julian stared at the file in silence, the weight of it pressing hard against his chest. The coroner's report was cold, clinical. Alcohol in the system, no drugs, gunshot to the head. He closed the file. He didn't speak of it to anyone. Not publicly, not in briefings, not even to Nia. But that night, he drove to the motel. He stood outside room 8B, where yellow tape still fluttered in the wind. The air was stale, sour. A single dim bulb cast a weak glow over the door. Julian didn't know why he came. Closure, pity, victory. He felt none of those things. Only sadness. Not for the man Rick was, but for the man he could have been. A month passed. Then, too, the department had changed. The city had changed. But change, Julian knew, was not a destination, it was a fight. Every day, every decision. He sat again at Maya's school, reading to a group of second graders during Community Heroes Week. She hugged him after. "You look like my uncle," he smiled. "Then your uncle must be a good-looking man." The class giggled as he walked back to his car. A young officer, Officer Daniels, freshly out of academy, ran up behind him. "Chief," Julian turned. I just wanted to say thank you," Daniel said, "for everything. I became a cop because of you, because I saw you on TV and thought, maybe we could be the good guys again." Julian's eyes glistened. He nodded, then be one. Every day. Not for the cameras, not for the badge, for them. He pointed toward the school, toward the children laughing behind the glass. Daniel straightened. "Yes, sir." Later that night, Julian visited the old precinct where he had trained as a young officer. The same building where he'd once been the only black man in the room. The same building where they'd told him to keep his head down. He stood outside the rusted gates, looking up at the worn emblem above the door. A memory flashed of a younger him, bruised but defiant, staring down a training sergeant who told him he'd never make it. Julian smiled, not a smile of revenge, but of triumph. He turned, walked back to his car, and drove off into the night. No fanfare, no headlines, just the steady, quiet power of a man who changed everything because one man tried to spit him down, and he chose to rise.